can also have a chance to on YouTube or many media. The theme for today will be finding a sustainable path to net zero the African way. And actually, like I said, it's going to be it's a pre-COP 28. I think our website. How many of us are going for COP 28 in Dubai? Great. You're going to be there. Doc will be there, of course. Okay, let's go. Guess you are going as well, right? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, so I believe that we Africans have an expectation. So this is going to be a global stage or stage to discuss things that will affect us. And that is the reason why we're going to hear from the speakers, wonderful ones, of course, whatever topics that they have for us, whatever they have to share with us. And that will be taken to Dubai for discussion. And as a matter of fact, I think we don't want to have a lot of discussions. We're going to have work done. We want to see the output of whatever we discussed over here. The house, Dr. Charles Ofori. We have Dr. Yen from KNUST. We have Engineer Joseph Amoa. We have Benedetta Akete Anna, who part of the speakers on the panel today. We're also going to have our keynote speech from His Excellency Dr. Omar Farouk, who out of Africa on a equally important assignment. So virtually. So then we'll move on to the panel discussion. It's going to be a very, very brief workshop, or let me say meeting for that matter. So we'll climb the stage in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll Hey, so wonderful good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those joining us virtually and those seated here in house. We want to welcome you once again to the Pre-COP 28 technical workshop, dubbed Financing a Sustainable Path to Net Zero, the African Way. As for late coming, it's part of our life. So it's the African way. That's very good. No mind. Don't hold me responsible for this. I hope the net zero will not be as late as our start time, but this is becoming part of us Africans. Every here on this soil, Africa, that is start on time. So next time we'll put 7:30. They'll start at 9. All right. Like I mentioned earlier on, we are starting the event right about now, and we're not going to hold you here for a long time because today is the beginning of the weekend. You need to close you by 12, and then you can go back to your offices and close out the week. Thank you for those joining us virtually. You're going to have a wonderful 2-hour session with power-packed presentation, keynote speech, and then all that, and a panel discussion where you all can have time to ask questions. We're going to open the questions up to those joining us virtually and those in-house. So that will not be an issue at all for full participation. Without wasting time, I want to call on Mabel to give us the in-house safety policy, calling rules, calling measures. Please let's clap for her at this time.
All protocols observed. Good morning, everyone. Yes, that will make your stay here comfortable. Please pay attention to the details. It can really, really make you comfortable. So first of all is before that, once again, welcome to ASEP, Africa. Wow. Door straight. There is a door that faces it. Entrance there. So when you go down the stairs, left, right opposite you. And in case post, when you go downstairs and you left, you left and it faces you. So it's not in corners. So one is there, you go out, there is one. Downstairs, the moment you down the stairs, you turn left, there is another one. Then if both are occupied, you turn left, then you turn left again. There are so many of them there. So that's true. And in case of emergency, again, and there is another exit that you can go down right and you go out of the office to the premises. One I would want us to take notice of is safeguarding in policy. So as much as possible, we encourage all our guests to uphold the rights and dignity of all participants, including staff here. Let's also be more tolerant views and respect each other's views and submissions. Let's also acknowledge, thank you. Let's acknowledge but at when reach with us. We are just here to deliberate, and everybody has a different perspective. That's why we brought in diverse stakeholders. So if somebody disagrees with you, it's not personal. That's the person's perspective. And let's also learn to share our previous submission. Thank you very much.
This is the holy ground. Things don't fall. But I think we have so many washrooms around, but they're all on the left. So otherwise we are so much to the right. So we're gonna have some issues. But thank you so much, Mabel, for that safety and precautionary measures given to us. We hope that there will be no drill today, and we're gonna have a smooth 2-hour drive or ride today. So without wasting time, let me call on the session of Ghana of Engineer now, who wants to give us the welcoming address. Thanks.
You can hear me loud. Mic is not good. Cause observe on behalf of the African Center for Energy Policy, ECHO We are honored to have you all join us here in person and also online for this essential the key to our future, the pursuit of a sustainable path to net zero. Environmental sustainability are now more urgent than ever, and our dear African continent environmental sustainability with the continent to economic realities. African nations have historically contributed less to greenhouse gas emissions, but often bear the brunt of climate-related disasters. We must therefore ensure that the journey towards net zero benefits all segments of our population behind. In this of natural resources and renewable potential across the continent, from the sun-drenched deserts to vast wind-rich plains and abundant hydropower sources. Africa has the but for the world. We must develop and harness this resource balance in the world. Second way also for solutions that respect local knowledge and empower communities to actively participate in the transition to sustainability. It also encompasses need for partnership and collaborating on a global. We understand that addressing climate change is a collective endeavor. African nations working together with international allies can leverage expertise and resources to unlock the full potential of our sustainable initiatives. Key note to remember always is that the path to net zero is not without its challenges. It requires bold and innovative solutions, investment in sustainable infrastructure, and a commitment to reimagining our economy. I have a strong belief that with determination, resilience, and a deep reverence for our land and its people, the way for a brighter and a to engage in robust discussions. Just as Mabel mentioned earlier on, our opinions might be varied, but we need to accept each other's opinions. Okay? So let's have robust discussions, share our experiences, and build networks that will lead us towards a sustainable path to net zero. Let us work collectively in the true spirit of unity and cooperation to find innovative solutions and ensure that our African way of a sustainable path to net zero becomes a guiding light for the world. So today, we look forward to an insightful discussion, the outcomes that we emerge from this workshop, and we hope together we can for Africa and the entire world. Thank you once again.
Okay. Thank you so much, my able person chair, for that wonderful welcome remark. I think after that presentation, you don't need to even talk again. You have covered all the from technology to finance and our way. All right, a black Camry with number 280 has blocked the way. So if you don't mind to repack or give your key to James, and then we do that for you so you don't disrupt your movement. Oh, doctor. Okay, this one is forgiven. Right. So next on the agenda, we invite Saben Kwapena Boakye, the Executive Director of RISEP, to give us the guest speaker's note. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's only Riverton who can make me a guest in my home. And I take note of that. It's exciting to have a first event in our hall, not just with any other ordinary people, but the Society of Petroleum Engineers. And you're welcome to the Africa Center for Energy Policy. The session chair, distinguished ladies and I'm truly honored before you to discuss the topic of power that transcends geographic boundaries and it affects every corner of our planet. The urgent need to find a sustainable path to net zero, the African way. And I'm not just addressing the ordinary African, but as I indicated, engineers, economists, industry business, who must embody strategy, action, and policy responses to the critical question on energy crisis. Africa, with its tapestry of culture, diverse landscape, and vibrant economies, has long been at the forefront of the battle against climate change. The continent has been facing the adverse impact of warming planet for years, from extreme weather events to changing precipitation patterns. And this year in Ghana, we experienced higher than expected volumes of rain that is causing havoc for communities up and downstream the Volta Lake and the Akosombo Dam. Even for those along the catchment areas who do not have access to electricity, they are suffering the brunt of power that goes to cities and communities outside the city. These events cannot just be a call to action, but a clarion call for innovation, collaboration, and commitment to building a sustainable future. To embark on this journey towards net zero emissions, it is imperative that we recognize and leverage Africa's unique strengths and resources. The African way is about blending tradition with technology, local knowledge with global insight, and fostering a sense of collective responsibility. Today, I want to go deeper into the critical aspects of Africa's energy landscape, emphasizing the imperative for a comprehensive reform that extends from efficient procurement systems to sustainable oil and gas extraction, competitive downstream petroleum utilization, and the vital need to address corruption and uphold fiduciary responsibility. Africa's energy sector stands at a crossroads, necessitating a transformative approach to ensure widespread access to reliable and affordable energy. And we are told that 600 million of our population live without access to electricity. An efficient procurement system is the cornerstone for this transformation. By streamlining processes, leveraging technology, and promoting transparency, we can significantly reduce costs associated with energy infrastructure projects. This, in turn, enables governments and private entities to invest in expanding access to underserved populations, particularly those in the rural areas. One of the primary issues contributing to the erosion of benefits in the oil and gas sector has been a lack of transparency in contracts. Even when the law exists, it exists at the discretion of the politicians who will always find ways to undermine its effectiveness. The opaque nature of some oil deals have allowed for the exploitation of resources without the consideration for the welfare of local populations, the long-term economic sustainability of countries, and effective use of revenue from the sector. To avoid repeating these mistakes in the realms of renewable energy, we must insist on transparent and accountable contracting processes. This includes open bidding systems, clear disclosure of terms, and active involvement of local communities in decision-making processes. By learning from the shortcomings in the oil sector, we can ensure that renewable energy projects are designed with fairness and inclusivity, fostering a sustainable energy landscape that benefits all. As we acknowledge the importance of the oil and gas sector in many African countries, particularly the oil-producing countries, it is imperative to underscore the significance of effective and efficient and sustainable oil extraction processes. Upstream activities, including exploration and drilling, must be executed with the utmost environmental stewardship. Technology must minimize methane and carbon emissions during oil extraction, and that should be prioritized. Stringent regulation must also be enforced to ensure compliance with environmental standards. Investment in research and development for cleaner extraction technologies, coupled with implementation of best practices, can mitigate the environmental footprint of the oil and gas industry. This commitment to sustainability not only aligns with global efforts to combat climate change, but also safeguard the ecosystem upon which many communities depend. Similarly, efficiency and competitiveness in the downstream petroleum sector are pivotal in minimizing emissions and mitigating climate impact. Investment in the state-of-the-art refining technologies and infrastructure can enhance the efficiency of the entire value chain. Additionally, promoting healthy competition underpinned by innovative technologies among downstream players can lead to the development of cleaner and more sustainable energy products. Strategic urban planning, including the establishment of efficient transportation systems and the promotion of public transit, can further reduce the carbon footprint associated with petroleum use. The integration of cleaner and greener technologies and products, such as fuel blending with bioenergy into the transportation sector, is a key component of this effort. This also creates an effective transition avenue for the oil industry, particularly the jobs that we have in the sector. We must harness the power of renewable energy sources that Africa is abundantly blessed with. The continent boasts an abundance of sunlight and wind, offering an unparalleled opportunity to invest in solar and wind energy. By embracing and expanding our renewable energy capacity, we not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also drive economic development, creating and realigning jobs and empowering communities. We must also note that transitioning to a sustainable future is not solely about technological advancement. It is equally about understanding and respecting the delicate balance of ecosystems and biodiversity Africa is home to. Conservation efforts, sustainable agriculture practice, responsible land use planning must be integral components of our net zero strategy. Moreover, the African way involves acknowledging the pivotal role of local communities in driving change, empowering communities to become stewards of their environment, providing them with the knowledge and tools to adopt sustainable practices to ensure that the transition to net zero is inclusive and just. Education emerges as a cornerstone in this endeavor by fostering a culture of environmental consciousness. From an early age, we equip the future generations of Africa with the understanding and passion to preserve their natural heritage. Education is a catalyst that transforms awareness into action, turning individuals into ambassadors for a sustainable Africa. It is also crucial to recognize that the journey to net zero requires collaboration on the global stage. Africa must actively engage in international dialogues, share experiences, and leverage support by showing example to accelerate the transition. Partnership with developed nations, international organizations, and the private sector are indispensable for accessing resources, technology transfer, and capacity building. The African way also involves embracing innovation in sustainable practices, from circular economy to green infrastructure, investing in research and development, encouraging entrepreneurs in the green sector. Fostering a culture of innovation will position Africa at the forefront of sustainable development. Growing up, I used to see artisans recycling aluminum into cooking pots. How did we manage to get to a situation where now we sell scrap and export them outside our stores to refine, and then import the same product back into our country? This is a failure that we need to reverse agencies. The fight against corruption within agencies is paramount in ensuring that the benefits of energy resources are equitably distributed among the population. Political leaders must be held accountable for their fiduciary responsibilities, ensuring that funds allocated to the energy sector are utilized efficiently and transparently. Robust regulatory frameworks, independent oversight bodies, and the involvement of civil society are crucial in curbing corruption and ensuring responsible resource management. Efforts to be directed at depoliticizing the energy sector, reducing the influence of vested interests, and fostering an environment where decision-making is guided by long-term interests of our nation rather than short-term gain for a few. I am deeply worried that the commercialization of the fiduciary responsibilities of our leaders is engineering a colonization in Africa in recent times. Foreign interest now determines whether the light will be on or not. Perhaps for a good reason, we must pay our bills. But how did we spend billions of dollars in the dark and go to sleep hoping that the lights will be on? How do we sustain poor management of strategic power sector agencies and hope that the debt will not accumulate? We need to hold ourselves accountable. I want to wrap this up by restating again that the path to sustainable and inclusive energy future for Africa requires a holistic and concerted effort. By overhauling procurement systems, adopting sustainable practices in oil extraction, promoting efficiency in downstream petroleum use, and combating corruption, Africa can unlock the full potential of its energy resources for the benefit of its people and the preservation of the planet. It is our collective responsibility that we demand collaboration, innovation, and unwavering commitment to save the planet and promote the livelihood of our people. On that note, I thank you for your kind attention.
Hello. Please, let's clap again for President Boateng. Most of the things that he said is above my pay grade. But I apparently like it when we look at energy transition as a holistic, my holistic approach. Even as we transition with the understanding that every cent added on to the asset will increase your tariff, you become worried. Because if you have signed deals that are still in the pipeline, and adding on will be very much problematic when it comes to tariff setting. He touched on contracts from the upstream. He touched on contracts from power generation, which for me is ideal. Research and development, and I believe one of our speakers is going to talk about that. We have methane emission was mentioned, efficient transport system, talking about the downstream petroleum market, and also innovation. So I think I put a lot of keywords here that I'll put back my mind to rally on. I think this point you're going to have His Excellency Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, the APO General Secretary, to give his remark. But because he's going to join us virtually, I'm going to ask two strong men. If you're not strong, don't come here. Two strong men to help me carry this wonderful, I don't know whether it's blue or turquoise. Is it blue? It's blue. All right. To carry this out of here. James, I said strong men. Right. So we're going to listen to our keynote speech right after the wonderful and guest speaker speeches. So if the video is ready, I'm glad to let it roll. And right after that, we will go into our presentations. All speakers are here, and then have our Q&A with them on the stage, and then we'll be good to go. So as I promised you, as you can see, we are going very fast, and we'll be done before realize. For those who came late, the item 30, you're not part. We won't give you. All right, ready to go? No? Okay. All right. Sorry for the technical hitches. We will slowly play this video again. We do have some technical problem at the moment. I will be moving straight to the presentations. At this point, I'll hand over to the moderator in the person of Sama Osapon to introduce the speakers, and we should be mindful of time because we've got another panel discussion following this. So you've been able to cover all what you need to say during your presentation. Just know that the panel discussion, when the question comes, we'll bring it up to fill the need. So please, let's welcome and once again.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. All protocols observed. Welcome to the most important reason why we are all here, to pay attention to the discussions on finding a sustainable path to net zero. Most importantly, the African way. You know that we cannot address the energy transition just by copying what the Western nations are doing, but we really need to tailor our solutions to the problems that we face here in Africa. And it is a great honor to be the moderator for this distinguished panel organized by the SPE Ghana session in collaboration with our esteemed partners, so the African Center for Energy Policy, Petroleum Holdings Development Corporation, and ECHO Africa. As we delve into the various topics that each and every speaker will be here to deliver, I know we are supposed to be allocating 15 minutes, but because of time, I would kindly plead with our distinguished speakers to squeeze their presentation into 10 minutes so that we can delve into deeper depth when we go into the panel discussion. And I think that would be very good. So we know that we are addressing a global issue here. So it is trying to mitigate carbon emissions, trying to mitigate and stabilize global greenhouse gas emissions on a global scale. But as you know, Ghana, like many African nations, our challenges, energy and climate change is different. And so this is what has prompted the conversation that we have. So for us to delve into. Methane management, research ecosystem, energy transition, the role of youth in navigating the African energy transition through the legal legislative impact as well. So without much ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce our very first speaker, Dr. Charles Ofori. He is the policy lead, climate change and energy transition at ACEP. His topic is going to be on methane management as a pathway to net zero, prospects and challenges for African oil producers. Please give him a round of applause.
So good morning. So I have 10 minutes, so I will be very snappy with the presentation. My name is Charles James Ofori, and I'm presenting on methane management as a pathway role. The prospects and challenges. So basically, most of the time when we are dealing with net zero emissions, when we are dealing with greenhouse gas emissions, we always talk about CO2. But methane also happens to be a very potent gas, they overlooked within the energy transition conversation. In terms of our gas emission potential or global warming potential, methane has a bigger potential than CO2. In fact, within a span of 100 years, its potential is about 28 to 36 times that of carbon dioxide. And with a period of time, actually about 4 or 6% of areas where the emissions occur. We have oil and gas, we have agriculture, landfills and wastewater, coal mining, bioenergy. All of these are in various sources where methane emissions occur. But today we want to focus on the oil and gas, because that in Africa, if you take bioenergy, those are not oil rich, so most oil rich countries, a bulk of the methane emissions come from the energy sector. So as I mentioned, we have the various sources, and we have the methane emissions, but energy contributes about 50% of the methane emissions. It breaks down to see that gas contributes about 60% of the emissions that come from the energy sector. Then coal contributes about energy contributes about 7%, and the other gas sector, the emissions are which are more emissions that are immediately leak into the atmosphere, and then we have leak into the atmosphere, and then we have gas like it's actually converted into CO2. The combustion is not deep, then we have a problem. Reduce emissions globally, and the science has shown that we have existing technology that can help us to do these emissions reduction, and replacing pneumatic units, methane utilization, methane leak detection and repair are all various forms of methane emissions reduction. We have seen a lot of global initiatives on methane. It's becoming more and more pronounced in the system, but we need a lot of advocacy on methane emissions, although we've seen quite a number. And for Africa, it's also important to ask, despite the fact that we continue to hear the news that we emit less, if we are showing now leadership at charge of methane emissions reduction, it helps in 2 ways. Number one, we are reducing our contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, and then number two, we are also reducing our economic losses from methane, because much as methane is a greenhouse gas, it can also be commercialized into natural gas for utilization. So it has a better economic and environmental importance if you're able to control for it. In Africa, oil and gas is also a bigger contributor to methane emissions, and that is why we really need to do that. Now, because we do not have much time, I would quickly go into some key best practices that we have seen among various countries, and also what are the gaps in methane management that we. So I'll quickly run into that, and then we would end the discussion. If you take a country like Nigeria, when it comes to methane abatement efforts, they emerge as a forerunner in their methane reduction efforts. And you see that they have put in place a lot of guidelines, a lot of plans, a lot of policies, specifically to handle methane emission reduction in the country. But of course, there are a lot of things that they also need to do in terms of aligning their institutions, their stakeholders, and their institutional roles to ensure that these guidelines of these policies are effectively implemented. Ghana and Angola and Nigeria are also examples of the importance of gas commercialization to reduce gas flaring. We have the Ajabo gas plant that has been instituted, that has been constructed, and that contributed to reducing the extent of gas that is fled. Now that it is the amount of gas that is being pumped out from the Pen and Jubilee fields are more than the capacity of the field. We've seen increasing amount of gas that is fled. It tells you that if you have a bigger infrastructure to commercialize that gas, we're able to reduce the flaring and then the eventual methane emissions, and also to commercialize and get some form of benefit. Another serious issue has to do with that is the monitoring, reporting, and then the verification system, which will be very strong. For Ghana and Nigeria, they have to some extent good MRV systems to help to detect and also to measure the extent of emissions. But they rely on voluntary assessment, voluntary reporting for companies that can also use the level of accuracy that those companies offer. Then we've seen how the extent of support from development finance institutions and how they can also help to provide necessary systems and also invest in the necessary systems for the oil and gas sector. Now, as I mentioned, methane emissions actually is from three key things: gas sector, gas flaring, venting, and then fugitive emissions. But most actions methane emissions within the sector have been focused on reducing flaring. If you look at the statistics of methane emissions, a bulk of them is coming from venting. That means that even if we go zero flaring and we do not tackle issues around venting, issues around fugitive emissions, we are going to still have problems with methane emissions. So we need a holistic approach in dealing with the issues around methane emissions. Of course, preventing gas flaring for us in utilizing gas, but we need to also get into how we can reduce emissions from venting and how we can reduce emissions from fugitive emission sources. Also, the political will, I don't think I have to talk about it that much. It also hinders methane emissions reduction implementation. Then another key issue is the national oil companies that we need to see them to put in a lot more effort. You've seen a lot of global alliances on methane, but we hardly see the fact that these NOCs that are powerful people, powerful institutions when it comes to oil and gas energy transition management are not signing on to some of these and are not committed to some of these things. So they do so. So the actions that is required is really for us to take responsibility for we need to have realistic plans to eliminate methane emissions, and we need to develop and clarify rules to prevent institutional overlap and to ensure that all institutions in place in the right areas to tackle methane emissions. Then NOCs demonstrate the kind of leadership that we need to implement these management strategies. A shared commitment among governments and companies is also required. Most of the time, there is this contention about who is responsible to be responsible for investment in methane emissions abatement efforts. Government is industry to do it, the industry is the government to support. But the point is that we need to have a conversation to see where we can all reach a compromise and have a shared understanding of what our roles as government and as industry should be. Then also for new producers, we should ensure that the lessons from gas is to let everybody know that we need to ensure that gas commercialization infrastructure to coincide with oil and gas production so that we can reduce the extent of gas flaring. And also, we need to integrate strict provisions on methane emissions management into our various legal frameworks so that companies and other stakeholders will serve as a binding rule for them. I'll touch on the need for philanthropy organizations, development finance institutions, developmental meetings, and foreign meetings to also integrate management into their strategies. As we scan the environment, we are seeing that it is now that some meetings are still not understanding the issues around methane management, and it is high time that we begin to understand so that we can build and the agency around it, just as we've done for CO2 emissions. Then, lastly, as part of ESG strategy, we recommend that development finance institutions and other financing institutions should make methane management a precondition for financing as far as new oil and gas field developments are. There's a lot to talk about, but I will leave it for here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Ofori. And a key takeaway is that the necessity of methane management and how crucial it is for achieving net zero emissions. I think during the panel discussion, we would delve deeper into some of the things that Ghana has done as a government, as a nation, and how other African nations can also learn from our initiatives. Would also integrate some of those initiatives into the legal discussion, so the legislative discussion during Mrs. Lawyer Benedicta's presentation. So on that note, I would like to move on to our next speaker. He is in the person of Dr. Yen Adams Sokama. The surname permits me, I'm going to try. Sokama Nyenyam. Did I get it correct? Newyam. Okay, I'm sorry. He is Senior Lecturer and Principal Research Lead, Net Zero Carbon Emissions Lab in KNUST. His topic is going to be on building a robust research ecosystem to delve into Africa's transition to net zero. Give him a round of applause. So at 2 minutes, Doctor, you would see my hand go up. So.
All protocols observed. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on building a robust research ecosystem to drive Africa's transition to net zero. I'm going to pronounce the name well so that everyone can. My name is Yen Adams Sokamanoyam. I'm the Principal Research Lead, Net Zero Carbon Emission Lab, KNUST. I'm also a Senior Lecturer and the Head of Department, Petroleum Engineering Department, KNUST. First, I would want us to look at why Africa would need R&D in its transition to net zero. Now, we've all been told that Africa's contribution to global emission is about 3%. But there's high uncertainty in that value. For example, South Africa's contribution is 1.2%. So if a single country in Africa's contribution is 1.2%, it can be that the rest of Africa's contribution is 1.8 So there's a high uncertainty in that. That is number one. Number two, we are all here because we believe in progress. As a continent, we are going to grow. We are going to industrialize. We are going to create businesses, create cities, and all that. That comes with, because we are also dependent on fossil fuels. Okay. So I think that for the next 15 years, and we have done some studies on Ghana, for the next 15 years, Africa will be contributing close to about 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions if we do nothing, if we just continue on business as usual. Okay, so we must prepare to respond to that accordingly, and that is research challenge. We need substantial and reliable energy for sustainable economic growth. Fossil fuel provides that option. Now, okay, we are going into renewables and all that. We are trying our best in that aspect. But for now, most of our systems are dependent on fossil-related energy. And for us to sustain the development of fossil resources, which is critical for our economies, because we also need to generate money, we need to show, as Dr. Ben, Mr. Ben actually spoke. Mr. Ben mentioned that as a continent, we need to be able to show that we can develop fossil-related energy in a clean manner. That is critical. Okay, we can give all arguments that our things are low, we should be allowed to emit more and all that. It won't go anywhere. Okay, what will make an impact is if we can prove scientifically that we have the capability to develop fossil-related energy without emitting greenhouse gases into the environment. So that is a critical research problem. The energy transition presents unmatched economic opportunities. Okay, from now to 2050, it has been estimated that the world will need to invest about $110 trillion to transition to net zero. Okay, from now to 2030, we are going to be investing about 4.55 trillion minimum if we want to reduce emission by about 45%. Okay. So this is a huge market that we can consider. And luckily enough, Africa is home to about 60% of the materials required for this transition. 20% of this investment will go into the procurement of materials. 80% will go into technology development. So if we just consider ourselves as suppliers of raw material, as we have always been, we are going to benefit from only 20% of this investment. But if we take a step, we invest into research and development, and we go into the technology, we can also benefit from the remaining 80%. Also, we need to prepare our youth to take on energy transition jobs. And the best way you prepare people is giving them hands-on training, okay, research and development. According to our energy transition investment plan, we will need about $550 billion to decarbonize the net zero by 2060. I don't think we have that kind of money. So definitely we are going to depend on external partners for investment. That is understandable. But we can't depend on external partners for technology as well. And if we develop technology, we can cut down the cost by almost half. Now, I've approached so many people about research because of the Net Zero Carbon Emission Lab. And most of the time, Africa, no, we can't go into research because we don't have money. For us, research is all about money, and we don't have the money, so no research for us. Okay. We have advantages in Africa, peculiar to us. Abundance of every kind of research problem. Finding research problems is also a challenge. Okay, it's important for research. We have challenges that are similar to those that have been solved in other countries decades ago. If you take all the problems we are battling with today, about 90% of them have been solved by other countries. What we simply need to do is to adapt them to our use. Okay? The new challenges that we need to solve, which require high-level innovation, are just about 5 to 10%. Okay. Now, we have readily available raw material. Raw materials are very cheap. I can just go pick some clay and develop zeolite, okay? And I can test it and even optimize it to maybe use it as a direct air capture material so easily. Low cost of labor. Gives a postgraduate student 1,000 cedis a month. He will sleep in the lab and he will work for 24 hours every day. Okay? You don't get this elsewhere. Welcoming communities available and willing to engage. Community engagement is a delight in Africa. They welcome you. You go to communities to talk to them about their challenges. They welcome you and you live there with sometimes plantain in your car, free of charge. Okay? You don't get this anywhere. So, and then finally, we have freedom to take on any research challenge. You don't get this in some countries. In Africa, you can basically go out there, take any challenge and work on it as an academic institution, and you will not have any harassment. But we have challenges. Okay. The first challenge we have is absolute disregard of R&D as the driving force of national development. Anytime anyone is funding research here locally, it is because either the person will get you off his back, or he just wants to tick some box that he has done some research work. Okay? So this is a big deal. In fact, the rest of the problems, I don't talk about them. If we as a country can believe that we need research as the driving force of national development, that is it. More than half of the research challenge will all be solved. Now, this is what I'm proposing. Okay? We need to be able to help our leaders understand the social cost of research. If you look at what I've just put on here, it's very simple. If you take any national research challenge or policy, we can demonstrate to our leaders how much we are losing as a country by just going with the status quo. And we can also demonstrate to them how much we are going to gain in US dollars if we use a research-backed approach. Because most of the policies we do are based on experts and consultants. We do not involve researchers in it. If you involve researchers, it will require that first you collect data, understand the problem, formulate the policy. Then when you implement the policy, researchers are also involved right from the go, collecting data and giving you feedback to improve the system. Then I'm advocating this for academic institutions like ours, okay? We should look at home use inspired research, where we as an academic institution identify problem within the institution. For example, material development, cement. Okay, the cost of cement is high. Portland cement is environmentally unfriendly. So we as an institution, for example, can use part of our money to develop these materials, buildings in our own institution with these materials, and then demonstrate its benefit to us as an institution. Once we have done that, if people come, let's say leaders come to our institutional community and they see these things, we can convince them that research is important. We have to go beyond prototypes. We as African people do not value prototypes that much. Come to KNUST, we have all types of prototypes. Every kind of prototype, they are there. But we are not going beyond that because people can't see them work. And they want to see that these things are real and they can work. It's rather unfortunate that I don't. Okay, so let me just finish with it. It's not very clear, but I think I can just look at it. First, what I was proposing was a consortium. Unfortunately, the screen is not giving me the option to be able to show it properly, but this will give me a better option. I'm proposing a National Energy Transition Research Consortium. Everywhere globally, research in the energy transition is supported by consortia. The reason is very simple. If you give me money and get me off your back, I don't depend it because I'm trying to solve your problem. So you have to be involved. We must all be in it. So we have industry coming in with materials and problems. We have government coming in with regulation, and then academia coming in with innovation, okay? We mobilize the resources, create research in every academic or research institution. So we can have research one in charge of carbon removal, research two in charge of carbon compensation, research three in charge of emission monitoring, four in charge of emission reduction. These researchers are in different institutions, okay? Each one of them will fund research. Each one of funds research the research that is being funded is connected to a business incubator. The industry to the research right there. So every year, the researchers from these various institutions will come together to present the work they have done within the year. You don't need to give them too much money to start. Let's say you give everyone $100,000 to start. Then at the end of the year, they come to account what they have done with the 100,000. But let the selection process be rigorous. You shouldn't give me money because you know me. You shouldn't give me money because I'm your friend. You should give money because you evaluated the proposals and you found one that makes sense, that can work, and you fund it. Okay. Then once we have done that with the various research consortia, we can connect them to a regional energy transition research network via AFTA, where people can move to conduct research in the energy transition. The various consortia can come together to work on symposia, conferences, and stuff. So, to your time, but I'm done now. Globally, there's a strong correlation between the intensity of a country and GDP growth rate. Most African countries, and we, Ghana, we are one of the few countries in the world who want to develop without. It won't work. Okay, I'm afraid. We can't do without research and development. So we need to invest in that. We are home to 5 of the top 30 oil producers. We've been producing oil for the past maybe 5 decades or so. The industry is under external partners. Every technology there is owned by external partners. Are we going to depend on external partners again for this transition? This is a new industry. It's a new opportunity. Are we going to continue to depend on people, or we want to develop something on our own? Remember that those who are developing the technology there were in the same graduate schools with us. They were not better than us. They say Africa is all about theory. No, they are not better practically than us when we were in the labs there working together. The only challenge is that we return here and we are doing nothing, and they continue to work. So they end up developing better technology. If we return here and we develop technology, the same way they are doing there, we'll be better than them. Okay. And then finally, our success will hinge on our ability to build and sustain a robust research ecosystem, which is what I've presented today. I hope that this will present us another opportunity to do something different. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Sorry I have to cut into your presentation, but you have really showed us how research in Ghana, in Africa, can be scalable and very practical. So I'll allow you an extra minute during the Q&A session to take us deeper into that entire diagram. Thank you so much. Moving on, I would like to introduce our third speaker. He's in the person of Engineer Joseph Willie Amoah, Head of Operations and Projects at PHDC, and he's also the SPE Ghana Session Programs Deputy. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. And he's going to be delivering a presentation on the topic, a just energy transition and finding sustainable solutions to Africa's energy future. A round of applause. Again, at 2 minutes, you see my hand up, so please be looking in my direction.
Good morning, all protocols of them. Thank you very much to FD, ITEP, and ECO Africa Network for this. Our newly, honorary doctorate, Dr. Boache. Thank you so much. So I've been warned, so I'll try to move as quickly as possible. And then whatever we're not able to touch on, we'll speak about during the panel discussion. All right. So I first want to contextualize the energy transition for Africa, right? So this is not the first energy transition, the global energy transition. There have been previous energy transitions, right? Between 1800 to date, there have been 2 transitions. The first was a transition towards coal, right? Driven by the technological advancements of the steam engine. The second was transition towards oil, right? And this transition has been driven because we are concerned about the global carbon budget, right? And what
the climate change effect will mean for the human existence, as it were, right? So as it has evolved, there has been a sort of a separation of ideas between the global north and the global south, right? And the idea of a just transition being championed by the global south, including Africa, has been that we need to have a climate resilient, low carbon economy without energy poverty, right? And so a lot of discussion has centered around, is this the Faustian bargain? Are we giving up our environment in order to develop, or is there a way to do both together? And so I'll try to be a bit prescriptive as quickly as possible in sharing some ideas around this. So in order to do this in a way that is systematic, I'll try to do it within a certain framework, right? So from the 60s, when we had the effect oil embargoes in the 70s actually, a lot of work went into what we call energy security, or the security of energy supply. And one of the frameworks that was used by what we have now in the developed countries was what we call the 4A framework, which deals with the availability, affordability, accessibility, and acceptability of energy supply, right? So here, in this context, availability for me would mean connecting Africa's vast renewable and non-renewable resources, right? And avoiding stranded or underdeveloped assets, right? Affordability here, we'll talk about the market. I'll try to talk a bit about developing new markets and making the existing markets more efficient, right? So that we don't distort what pricing is supposed to do as a signal. Accessibility, I'll speak very briefly about what infrastructure means within the African context for achieving just transition. And then accessibility will mean, we'll talk a bit more about the environmental implications, right? Especially in terms of the local environmental quality. Do we have to sacrifice that in order to meet our energy needs? All right, so moving straight into it, right? In affordability, or what I'll call the market dimension, one of the things that we need to do quite clearly is to improve existing inter-African trade, right? We trade too little among ourselves. And that is because when you have 54 fragmented countries with different levels of resources and needs, all trying to more or less outdo each other, we are not going to accomplish anything as a continent. So it is important to have supranational energy governance and trading policies, increase our volumes and improve our sense of trade, and then also drive mechanisms that will facilitate those market activities. So after is a good platform to achieve this, right? But you need to understand that because energy as a commodity is traded on two levels. The physical product is traded, but there are also a lot of underlying financial products that are traded based on the physical product. And so if you don't develop the right framework around it, then you end up with what is a very inefficient market system that really benefits no one in the end. All right. Now, the second thing I'll talk about specifically is that we need to unify the African energy market. Frankly speaking, it's a shame that as of today, we are not able to accomplish it. In 2021, the African Union launched what is the African electricity market. Of the implementation was supposed to have been set by 2023, and we are supposed to have the unified African market. It operates now fully by 2040. Why do we need 19 years to create a single market? We need really to address these things with speed, right? Because we don't have the time that we want to take in order to take what is essentially the platform that we need in order to address some of these pressing issues. Also, the competitiveness of African energy firms is something that we need to look at and address quite quickly. I mean, Mr. or Dr. Boy, depending on what time you arrive here, talk about procurement issues, contracting, corruption, etc. The energy industry is heavily dominated by state-owned enterprises, which frankly perform very poorly. In Africa, only two utility companies are financially viable. So all the rest are just leaking money, and it's business as usual forever, right? We cannot continue this path if we want to actually transition and transition well and transition quickly. And then also, I've seen a lot of discussions about, I think I saw GMPC asking respective people to come in and help them to do I think, become an energy company. I've seen it in Senegal as well, a few companies. But the question is that what really could be the role of a national oil company? When you were focused on one thing, you are losing money, right? So if you are just transitioning because everyone is transitioning, is that the way to go? We need to be clear about what is the structure, what is the role, and what is the risk profile of our NOC index. And I will also say that we also need to improve the private sector participation, frankly speaking, within this economic dimension, because it is too heavily dependent on state institutions. And unfortunately, it also means that the politician actually decides the market, which is not how it is supposed to be. Right. Now, I'll move quickly to the availability dimension, right? We need to leverage Africa's resources. Standard assets are a lot to Africa, but they are benefits to no one. So when we talk about standard, people are talking about because of the transition, we need to quickly move the renewables and then leave oil and gas in the ground. My question is why? Who benefits when we leave the oil and gas in the ground? No one benefits. Yes, Africa loses, but no one benefits. In any case, there has never been a complete transition ever. When we transition from coal to oil, we never stop using coal. When we transition from oil to renewables, we will not stop using oil. So we need to stop thinking of net zero as fossil zero, where the idea is that because you're transitioning, there will be no use for oil and gas. It's not true. A diverse energy mix will be the future of the entire world, not just Africa. And so we need to own that, and then we need to develop our resources in line with that. And flowing from that, we need to also accept that both renewables and non-renewables have a role to play in the energy future that we want. It is not an either-or situation. All of them have a role to play, and there are many ways by which we can ensure that these two are acting complementarily. Also, quite importantly, on this, the critical mineral value chain is one aspect of. So Ghana just signed a deal with Atlantic, something for lithium extraction, right? We must not repeat the mistake that we made, the mistake that we made with mining in gold after a century of gold mining, of what we can write about. We cannot repeat those things. So we need to plug into the full value chain and do that as quickly as possible. Now we need to build resilient energy infrastructure, right? There are not enough cross-border infrastructure development in Africa. If you take a country like Guinea, which has huge solar potential, and you look at its domestic market, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say that the gas Nigeria to build for Nigeria can actually power the entire Africa at the very minimum. And so these are things that we need to look at. Mega Petroleum Hub, which is where I work, I read the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation, right? There's a 40 billion there's no point investing in research if at the end of the day we can commercialize and benefit from it, right? In terms of sustainability, very quickly, I would say that we cannot simply say because we want to achieve energy, to achieve to provide energy to all our the African population, then we must waste in it. So the demand side management, such as energy efficiency programs, efficient lighting, efficient heating, distributed energy systems. We don't have to urbanize all of Africa just to provide electricity. Today, we can have standalone grids, which also provide the electricity we need, right? And we also need to address the security vulnerability that come from. Because, for example, the delay is simply because of jihadists. If we can address these issues, we can move faster with our energy transition activities. Okay, Madam is on her feet. So, very quickly, regulations, which I think also Mr. Baji spoke about. I mean, there's no use for having laws which we are not actually going to implement. So the regulations need to be not in the afterthought. We need to think about regulations now, especially for the critical items like the minerals, and ensure that we are working within frameworks that benefit all of us. What would provide social and economic benefits, more inclusive societies, equitable development, job creation, and opportunities to build a competitive energy sector for all players. Quickly, because I know that this is the first time that PhD is collaborating with ASF, I'll very speak briefly about what PhD is about. So PhD is a Petroleum Hub Development Corporation. I would say the newest baby of the Ministry of Energy, set up under Act 1053, essentially to promote and develop petroleum and petrochemical hub in Ghana. This is one of the mega projects that I spoke about earlier. It is estimated at a value of 60 billion against a GDP of about 70-something billion, right? So it's major. And what is going to be is a network. A hub is going to be a network of refineries, petrochemical plants, storage tanks, jetties, and port infrastructure that will allow Ghana to be the provider of the energy products in the downstream sector, right? To consolidate all this right here in Ghana and serve what is really a huge market of the African continent and even also the global stage, right? So there's a lot in there, but I will leave that. And in terms of sustainability, because of the team here, my very last slide is it. the two pillars that PAGIS is looking at is balancing economic, environmental, and social considerations and empowering people through local content maximization and integration of gender. So there are certain activities on the right-hand side the corporation is working towards to ensure that as we build a hub and make Ghana the one-stop shop for downstream refined petroleum products, we don't leave anyone behind, but the entire society and the country as a whole is carried along on this journey. So I'll end here, and hopefully during the panel discussion, we'll have a bit more time to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer, and our very able Deputy Programs Chair. As the newest baby of the Ministry of Energy, I also believe that there's a lot of finances inside this hub that will be able to finance the energy transition, because we know that the energy transition is not just a buzzword. You have highlighted that there needs to be incorporation between the national oil companies, the private sector, so that we can move towards a net zero future. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next on the list will be a presentation from Wisdom Joshua Frimpong. He is the founder of Eco Africa Network, and he will be presenting on the topic, Africa's energy transition process, the role of the youth. Thank you. Round of applause, please.
Morning. Over. Today I decided to go my Northern Brothers direction. So anyway, we're supposed to do all of this in 10 minutes. So we're going to perform the magic together. Right. Now, sitting to speak on the role of youth in Africa, Africa's energy transition process is very critical to me, myself, and then the organization, particularly because we cannot overemphasize the importance of why young people need to be given a space. Now, originally, I was supposed to just talk about the role, but there's a symbiotic relationship, right, between us getting the involvement and then the role itself. So I'll just quickly move to showing why it's important to involve young people. If you look at the diagram, Africa is the youngest continent in the world with over 60% of its population under age 25. And what this means is that we are both presented with a challenge and an opportunity. Because while our population keeps increasing, it means that our young people are going to encompass a larger part of it. And we cannot talk about our transition process without thinking about them. It's not possible. If you look at the side, again, you can see that Africa's youth population is expected to double by 2050. And already we have some pressing challenges that we're facing, which of course, Mr. Benjamin reiterated in his speech that over 600 million people are living without electricity. Right. Now we'll move to this side. Ghana's Energy National Framework, right, has indicated that by 2070, our population is supposed to increase by 70.2 million. And the African Development Bank has mentioned that as of 2023, our population, which is 30.8 million, is represented 70% by young people. Again, are we still seeing why we need to involve young people? Because almost all the conversations we're having is going to rest on the shoulders of young people. If you have 70% of them, we can assume that by 2070, we're still going to have perhaps more or still close to the same percentage, right? Now, if we have to involve them, there are certain pressing challenges that we need to clear away from the road. We need to make it an easy passage for them to be able to get involved. Now, I'm just highlighting a few of the challenges that many young people, given that Eco Africa works directly with them, are being able to identify. And the first one, of course, is our limited access to education and training, particularly on energy. We can look at the room, use a practical example. How many young people are here? We still have a lot more space. Oh, Doc, you're young. That's fine. We still have a lot of spaces which are yet to be filled. But this is an important subject that many young people should be totally interested in and should be here. So it's either they are not getting the information, or they are getting it, but they still do not see the significance of it and why they need to be here. And before somebody will see the value of something, the person must first understand it. So if they don't understand, then there's no need that they will be here in the first place. So training is corollary to for them, playing a major role in the energy transition process, which is very important. Again, for those who even understand even a little bit, they don't have mentorship and support. Beyond energy, mentorship is a big problem in Africa. We have very few mentors that many young people can learn from. It's one of the pressing issues as well. And for those who want to start something, all of us are aware. The finance is a major issue. I heard the moderator mentioning it prior to my coming. Finance is a big issue that we have to pay attention to. And then the issue of the gender bias, very important. Now, if you take a look at this diagram, only 22% of global energy workforce. And in Africa, we have only 15%. So the gender gap is very huge that we need to pay attention to. So when I'm talking about young people, I want to focus on a lot of representation on every single person that matters. And of course, we can look at some of the which has to do with mentorship for women also don't have mentors to look up to. And gender stereotypes, which is a very big issue. We could also look at lack of education for women, of course, which we've been solving. But because we're talking about, when I'm talking about lack of education, the focus is that we need to also pay attention on educating women on energy. Right, it's very important. Now, I even talk. It's very within the space, the stakeholders who have the means a lot would have the wherewithal to be able to. So I believe that with involvement, we need to provide training and education for them. We need to offer them mentorship and support. We need to provide with access to important to must right. Thank you. ACO thing, and that is one of the things that some young people can pay attention to. I think that young people can adopt sustainable practices, energy development, it's a green solution. Okay. Innovating green solutions, participating in system planning. And I also think that many young people can use their voices to advocate for sustainable energy policy and initiatives. And when I talk about advocacy, I always want to solve the first, foremost, most important thing, that you be an advocate for something if you have adequate knowledge. Because you cannot be a voice. The account will say, they have a fine proverb. Yeah, in fact, I don't know if you know that you fill the belly before you blow trumpet before you would know. Right. So if we are the advocates, then it's important that young people here, we get to learn and know what we have to talk about. So that if you're saying something at home and your mom asks you, you don't say, oh, so that's what they told me. But it's something that you also know and then you can share. And I'll quickly just wrap up. These are some of the things young do, and it's the part, the solar program, Eco Africa, what we've been doing. We have the objective that in the next 5 years, at least, for about 1 million Ghanaian people, young people, we would have been involving them in the energy educating bit of it, very important, and helping them to know. We've started that leveraging on technology. And in the last few months, we've spoken to about 500 people on our Twitter spaces consistently. And it's been good because, you know, the questions they get asked are questions that, given the situation we are in, we didn't even expect young people to ask that because it's way down. But gradually we are picking it up. Many of them are joining, and these are people within the tertiary space. So even within a tertiary space, we have that, you know, decline. Then it's showing that there's a lot more work that we need to do and a lot more efforts that we need to put in place. So when we're doing the panel discussing, I'll hammer more on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did exactly 10. Thank you. The perfect segue to our next discussion, which. Hello, can you hear me? All right. So your presentation focus on youth, women, and it is the perfect segue to our next panel discussion, which is going to be from a woman. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She's a lawyer, Mrs. Benedicta Akese Anand. She's the lead sustainability consultant for ECHO Africa Network. She's going to be speaking on navigating the impact of legislation in the Africa's energy transition process. Please give her a round of applause. If you can do it better, only because she's a woman.
Thank you very much. Warm greetings to everyone present and online. In fact, it's an honor. The speeches have been amazing. I have learned a lot myself, and I'll be speaking on navigating the impact of legislation in Africa. Unfortunately, like a lawyer, not even the slides. Went old school by printing my speech, so you might not be seeing any points on the screen. Yes. So, quoting Kofi Annan at the World Summit at the SPEC in 2002, he says, "We look at the world for fuel, for medicine. We look at it as a source of sustenance, for spiritual maintenance. But when we look at the clear blue skies, let us not be deceived that all is well. All is not well, because science tells us that if we do not address the issues of climate change, havoc will come upon us even in this lifetime." Before I proceed with my speech, the main caveat is we must understand that Africa's legislation on the energy use and energy transition is not in isolation of Africa's history and peculiar story. In fact, what you are going to see from my speech or notice from my speeches, yes, I will talk about the laws that exist, but then I'll also be speaking about what is on the ground, specifically relating to engineer. Yes, please. So I found a lot of similarities in his, because that's the line I was towing. If we speak about laws in vacuum, then we are not achieving anything, because since time immemorial, yes, laws have existed. Before I move further down, you see that various countries have had various policies and legislation on energy, climate change, but it starts from some, which is the story of Africa. Like I have stated, fossil fuel has been existent for a long time. Before the discovery of that, we know that this relied on biomass and biofuel. Grandmothers and great-grandmothers knew firewood. Yes, they go some trees, they use it to food, their daily activities as a source of energy. That is the beginning of Africa's story. And at this time of Africa's story, we're looking at mostly in the 20s, the African countries started with exploration. You had the first world country, industrial revolution. And so the trajectory of Africa's story indeed is different from the North. And that is why we need a peculiar African solution to Africa's story. So before we even proceed to understand the regulatory landscape of the laws that surround energy use and energy transition, we must understand the circumstances, like I've stated, from the use of biomass or biofuel to fossil fuel, which has been existent for a long time. Another caveat is, if we're speaking about an energy transition, that we're saying that we're moving from fossil-based, then we cannot totally eliminate non-renewables, which is fact, because still explore. Sorry, hello? Yes. African countries also need to explore whatever resource they have to generate whatever income they have. So I'm going to do a case study we're looking from the international regime, because whatever is happening now is because the first world country started this. Their first industrial revolution started a long time ago. So at the time, there was the Montreal Protocol. Hello. Yeah. So the Montreal Protocol in 1987, which was basically protecting the ozone layer, because at the time, due to the engines that were depending on coal, they realized that, yes, we need to protect the sun from these emissions. And so at the time, there were 26 countries that were signatories to that protocol, which was basically to protect the ozone layer. And then from Montreal Protocol, we moved down to Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol was set in 1989, but because of the complex nature with respect to ratification, if we are cognizant of ratification, international laws are often described as, but the fact that you're a signatory to an international agreement does not necessarily bound by it in your municipal law, because we have the jurisprudence of monist states and dualist states. So for dualist states, even though they are signatories at the international level, that international agreement will need to be ratified by Parliament, and further in Ghana in Article 70, an international agreement is said to be bound by it. And so from Kyoto Protocol, we moved to the Paris Agreement, which is very famous. Now, the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement deal with 6 greenhouse gases: sulfur oxide, methane, carbon dioxide, hexafluoride, chlorofluorocarbons, and a few more. So what I want us to understand is, when you look at laws exist to bind people to act in a certain way. It is a binding force towards a certain objective. And so if we are talking about the energy transition, you realize that from most countries, you look at their Energy Act, what it does is, yes, it states that maybe the country or the government, in this case in Ghana, the president, all energy or all natural resources, he's using them for our benefits. You find that clause in most of the Energy Act. Then the Act establishes the ministry, establishes their roles, establishes objectives. But beyond that, the Act or the Energy Act or whatever legislation you see has no rippling effect on the change that you want to see. The change that actually happens comes from the policy, because the policy sets out the strategy, the objectives, how we are going to go about it. And then we can monitor over time based on the various policies that are in place. Now, if we look at South Africa had a white paper in 2003, although they had their Energy Act. What the white paper sought to do was, it stated specifically that, sorry, I have a bad eyesight. So it stated specifically that South Africa had to look at renewable energy sources. And so it provided the guideline and strategy for South Africa moving from coal to other renewable sources like solar energy. Now, because I have much, I'm going to try and rush this. So South Africa, for instance, one thing, or the current act which is in place, which is helping towards their transition, is the Carbon Tax Act. So the Carbon Tax Act puts in place the fact that for various organizations that are engaged in production, industrialization, and even in the production, the transportation sector, they are taxed based on excess emissions. It provides the whole formula for that. And that's an example of a law that or an act that enables the transition for various countries. Now, if you look at Kenya, Kenya is known in Africa for relying mainly on renewable sources of energy, geothermal, especially, and recently discovered fossil fuel. But one interesting thing about Kenya is they are part of the Eastern Pool. So with Kenya, Ethiopia, you have Egypt, the eastern side of Africa, they have this consortium where they help transport and distribute energy from one country to another. And if you look at Ghana, for instance, if you look at our current Energy Transition Act, which is very detailed, about 100 and something pages, it clearly sets the guidelines on how Ghana is going to transition from non-renewable to renewable. And if you look to that specifically, Ghana's position as the transition is natural gas. Maybe we can go on a debate on that later on, but for Ghana, I believe for Ghana, that is the transition. But I'm not going to bore you with laws, because if we decide to speak about laws and we will just say the law says this, the law says that. But the question really is, what happens after the laws are enacted? Like our various speakers have said, Africa's from corruption, issue of corruption. I mean, if someone has the capacity, Dr. Yen, you present your research. Yes, in the laws, you bid for it. We say you have to bid competitively. South Africa states clearly, Ghana, we say that in our Renewable Energy Act, and you bring your research bid, there's a tender, and we go through it, and at the end of the day, someone else goes to the back door and says, oh, I'll give you 10% of the amount if you give me the research. Then what is the essence of the laws? So the question really for Africa is, what next? Are we going to jump the hurdle of politics, of self-interest? Because the laws will forever be there, but as to whether they work on the ground, that will be another question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawyer Benedicta. One thing I've learned as an explorationist in this industry is the law is one thing, geology is another, but most times geology does not respect the law. So it will be very interesting to see how this energy transition regulation that we have now will play out in the next couple of years with all these legal acts, labeled out. So I'd like to say a big thank you to each and every one of our speakers. At this point, we've come to the end of the presentation, but there's a part 2 where we are going to give you the opportunity to also ask our speakers a few questions. So while we organize and take our speakers through, what I'd like us to do is I think we've been sitting for a while, just stand up, stretch, don't leave the room, just be around wherever you are. And then we'll organize the stage for the panel discussion. Just say to someone sitting next to you, and while we organize that. Oh, that's the people can come and ask the question. try not to leave the room. I see some people exiting. Just stay within the premises. Give us about 5 minutes and we will reconvene. I'll just take myself to Oh, okay. So let's go for it.
Yeah, they make this one to come for it tomorrow. I didn't think.
If someone wants to starting with Dr. Charles Ofori. Kindly join me on stage. Dr. Yen Adams, the surname, please forgive me. So let me just use Yen. All right, thank you. Engineer Joseph Willie, please join me on stage. Worship Joshua Frempong, please also join me on stage. And then finally, Benedicta Akese, a non-lawyer, please join me on stage. Okay, are we all comfortable? Right, so in this discussion, you me through the white paper. What we're going to do is go into in-depth Q&A. I'll take about 3 questions from our first 3 speakers. And for our final 2, we'll have audience throw their questions at you. I'd like to remind us of the topics that our speakers touched on so that you can prepare your questions. Dr. Charles Opori gave us a presentation on methane management and as a pathway to net zero, the prospects and challenges for oil Africa. Presentation on a robust research to drive Africa's transition to net zero. Engineer Joseph Willie gave us a presentation on a just energy transition, finding sustainable solutions to Africa's energy future. Worship Joshua Frimpong gave us a presentation on Africa's energy, the role of the youth. And finally, Lawyer Benedicta gave us a presentation on navigating the impact of legislation in Africa's energy transition process. So you're reminded of the topics. Firstly, I'd like to start with Dr. Charles Opori, Policy Lead, Climate Change and Energy Transition for ACEP. So you spoke about methane management, and as you have mentioned, methane is seen a critical pathway to achieving net zero emissions. What specific strategies, technologies that you think that Africa can adopt, Ghana specifically can also look to adopt? What are some of these strategies and technologies that you believe will be most effective in addressing methane emissions within the context of oil production in Africa? So after that, can these? Thank you.
All right, thank you much. So in terms of there are quite a number of technologies that are already in existence that can help within this whole system of methane emissions reduction. One of the technologies that comes to mind is, first of all, we have, I think we are in SPE, so we have a lot of here. We have what we call the pneumatic units that are units, the valves and units that helps within the power generation along the in the oil and gas sector. And most of these units are powered with natural gas within the space. And sometimes this natural gas occurs because of it is being used. We use natural gas. It's leaks and other fugitive emissions that occur. And the suggestion has been that in place of maybe using natural power these pneumatic units with electricity, other forms of electricity or even solar to power some of these units. The second aspect is what we also look at in terms of using vapor recovery units, using plungers to absorb the methane emissions that may occur in the valves, in the wellheads within the oil and gas sector as we begin to develop. And then we also have what we call leak detection and repair, where we use optical imaging systems to actually detect where the leaks are coming from so that those areas could be repaired. Now, for companies that are into gas production, they know that every unit of gas that is lost is actually a cost to their business. So they have those things really installed because recovering the gas is important to sustaining their business. But for companies that are not interested so much in the gas, but are interested in the crude, that is where most of the leaks and most of the venting really occur. Now, when it comes to, as you mentioned, in terms of economic benefit, I also alluded to the fact that although the methane is a greenhouse gas, it also has a lot of economic importance, economic benefit in terms of using it to commercialize our gas resources. So we can capture those gases and use it for power generation and for other non-power utilization. So that is where the potential is. That is where we are able to really get the benefits that we want. And the example of Ghana and Nigeria, when Nigeria sought out to do gas commercialization by preventing flaring, what they sought to do was that, okay, those areas that are supposed to be flared, we will give those flare sites on a commercial basis to companies that have the wherewithal to actually capture the gas for utilization. And that provides enough space. And Angola did that. And if you check the progress of Angola, they are inching zero flaring. And although their zero flaring target is in 2020, the projection shows that by 2025, if they continue at the current trajectory, they can hit zero flaring. So the technologies are available, the know-how is available, and looking at the commercialization potential of the gas, you can actually commercialize it and then also meet your greenhouse gas target.
I just wanted to touch a bit on the environmental aspect. You spoke about gas flaring, trying to minimize that, but not all companies are doing it. So can you just touch a little bit on the environmental aspect as well?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the earlier stage of the presentation, when the methane gets into the atmosphere, its potency is even bigger than CO2, the CO2 we always talk about. You know, most of these short-lived climate pollutants have a bigger global warming potential because when they get into the atmosphere, compared to gases like CO2, their lifespan in the atmosphere is shorter, but their impact is really huge. So the impact on our health, the impact on the environment, the impact on the global warming is huge. And the more you emit, the more you count towards your total greenhouse gas emissions. So the environmental impacts are even worse within a short lifespan than the kind of impacts we even want to see when it comes to CO2.
Thank you very much for that submission. It looks like there's still a long way we have to go to still learn and catch up to make sure that we are completely net zero. I'll move on now to Dr. Yen Adams. Building a robust research ecosystem is essential, as we've seen from your presentation, for driving Africa's energy transition towards net zero. But what are some of the key elements that you feel should be included in this ecosystem, and so that we can achieve net zero faster? And then how can African universities, Ghanaian universities and institutions collaborate to accelerate research in this field?
Thank you so much for the question. During my presentation, I mentioned the major problem we have is disregard for research as the driving force of our national development. It's not different from energy transition. It cuts across that solution that it was the demonstration of what we are losing by not including risk. What I call the social cost of research. For every policy out there, it can be free SHS, it's a good policy, but it's laden with challenges. If we go by the status quo, how much money are we losing? If we use a research-driven process, how much can we gain? This is what the politicians understand. Okay, if we can demonstrate that to them, then as institutions, academic institutions, we do not have the reputation that the makers think they can depend on, because stuff has happened. There have been cases where people went for fund, they did nothing, maybe just sent some vague reports, and that was it. Okay, so over the years, it has come to a point that companies don't trust academics, government don't trust us. So what can we do to gain that trust? Because the reason why we chose risk as a career is because we can help make an impact. Not just because we want to get some money, go do buy a bigger car. No, that is not fulfillment. Okay, so what I'm advocating is that we as institutions, we should go beyond prototypes. Invest part of our internally generated funds to implement the solutions. And I use cement as an example. We develop a lot of different building materials on campus. What prevents us from using it to build buildings in our own campus? Because we are also putting up buildings. Let's build something with it. when the policymakers come and you tell them, this is what we have built, this is how much it has saved us, this is how long it can stand compared to the concrete block buildings. And you tell them, as a country, we can gain if we scale it. They will begin to understand that research is important because we are also using it by ourselves. Okay. Then I propose the National Energy Transition Consortium. The reason why research out there is funded by consortia is because government need to regulate, or industry need to be there because they are coming with the problems, and then academia need to be there with innovation. Okay, we should all be working together. Once we create that, also split it into research chairs. Okay, we appoint researchers in all the public institutions for the different aspects of the energy transition. Then annually, they will come to account for the funding in a conference or in a symposium. And then you give them new funding to go and work. In that way, we have all the researchers involved. Now, the researcher who is taking the money there, we are advocating that every campus, every university nowadays, because of entrepreneurship, they have incubators. So as the research is, the technology is developed, when it's the stage of commercialization, it's into this incubator, the government has present it to that. Industry has an interest because they funded it. They must not be connected to the incubator so that any intellectual property that comes out is shared and owned by us as the country. We are funding it, we also own it. Then we move on to regional energy transition networks, where we connect all the consortia, and then we encourage mobility among them. That's what I advocate.
Awesome. USD, for instance, relations with industry and academia. I want you to talk or give an example, few examples of maybe international collaborations between KNUST or at least between academia and certain organizations.
Okay. For us at the Net Zero Carbon Emission Lab, I think last year we had discussion with Jensen, okay, on an energy transition project, very good project. They sent us feedback. We did the improvement. We had a presentation with them. Everyone was satisfied. But the project has been there for 1 year now. Okay, so collaboration, that was one of the best collaboration that I have had personally. When government, industry was willing, government was willing, but it got to a point we couldn't finish the process, and it's been 1 year. One is a long time. The budget has changed. I mean, a whole lot could have been done within 1 year. So collaborate. The process needs to be faster. I advocate more for collaboration than external collaboration. Collaborating with MIT is great, but the Department of Petroleum Engineering collaborating with the Department of Chemistry is better, because then iterate when you optimize it. They can develop material for me. I test. I send the feedback to them distance away, and then we can talk all the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You really outlined the roadmap for what Ghana's research industry should look like. Thank you. Please give me a round of applause. I'll move on to my next, and my question for you, Engineer Joseph, is that achieving a just energy transition of sustainability, as we have seen from your presentation, but can you highlight insights onto, how we can ensure that the energy transition in Africa is inclusive and also minimizes negative impacts on communities such as women, poverty-stricken areas, still driving the progress towards clean energy sources?
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, so I believe that when you talk about inclusivity, right, and equity in terms of the energy transition, a lot has already been done. and there really is no reason to reinvent the wheel when it comes to getting these things done right. And one of the most effective frameworks I have seen is the UN SDGs, which is currently ongoing, and many countries around the world are, tracking their targets and working towards achieving these specific targets. My only challenge with it is that we have to repurpose it for want to have the input, because there is no other region of the world where you have or as well as friends issues in just about every one of the 7 that have been said. So whether you take health, education, you will find access of the worst of it. But the framework is good, because in achieving it, you are going to end up with that inclusive society that you're looking at. But like I said, I think it has to repurpose. As it is today, there are distinct goals that have been met. So goal 1, no poverty; goal 2, no hunger, etc. Goal 7, access to energy, right? But how I would reimagine it is, rather than 17 distinct goals, let's look at it in a hub and spoke model. So when I say a hub and spoke model, what I'm saying is, let's put energy at the center, achieving goal 7 at the center, and let's link that to achieving all the 16 other goals, right? So then what it means is that if you look at a goal about building inclusive cities, right, or taking away hunger, right, there is none of these goals that are going to accomplish without solving the issue of energy access. See, I mean, the economists will tell you that even the energy is not as far from the factor of production, you produce enough energy, right? So if we're able to move societies up the energy ladder, we will see that the direct correlation between that and the levels of achievement we get when it comes to all the other goals. So more energy access will have an impact on health. It will have an impact on sanitation. It will have an impact on the climate. All this will come into play. And so I feel that this is one of the things that we have to look at. And so I agree with what my friend Dr. Adam talked about, that if there are so many problems in Africa as it is, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do is to take what the research has already done. We need to look at our specific problem. We need to repurpose the knowledge that already exists, and then we need to begin to address it within our context, right? Now, for the poor, the downtrodden, the marginalized in society, I would say that the market, which was one of the main things I spoke about, provide an excellent opportunity, because there is a social cost to having the levels of energy access we want, right? Every ton of CO2 that's emitted, every ton of methane that's emitted, has a cost. And so if we're able to, today it's an external cost, right? It's a market failure. If we can internalize those costs, right? And the easiest way is either through whether voluntary or compliance-based a market, you can actually internalize those costs. And if you internalize those costs across the continent, then you don't have carbon leakage, where people then move their production to places without those costs and simply export the product to the other places and then benefit from those mechanisms. And so if we can do that, and then we can be intentional also about ensuring that the benefits we receive from those markets are redistributed to those who are most highly affected by our energy activities, then we begin to create a more balanced world, right? Because we've seen it over and over again. When you subsidize energy, the research afterwards tells us that all the benefit ends up in the pockets of those who don't see the subsidies, right? So rethinking, we've done this, we've seen the mistakes. Why do we keep repeating over and over again? So building that just and inclusive society should not be something that we have to start all over again. If we look at what's already done, we learn from those mistakes, and then we will properly design and even redesign our markets to be able to efficiently allocate the resources, whether financial or otherwise. It's a way to go. The European Union in 2026 is launching what they call the carbon border adjustment mechanism. And so from that time, anything that is imported into the European Union will have within it a cost, the cost of carbon, right, associated with the production of. Today in Africa, 23% of all global emissions today are covered under some sort of carbon pricing. Only South Africa has a carbon market of any sort. So if you leave things as it is, very soon, Europe will start benefiting, right, from things that are produced in Africa. and for pollution that is being made in Africa. And we talk about the carbon and talk about the methane, but there are also local pollutants like the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, which cause acid rain. Acid rain has direct impact on your local environment. It has direct impact on food of the world, but of your local environment. So the earlier we plug into what is going on globally and begin to extract the value that, I mean, the better than that, it will just have been a discussion over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Opportunity, if you have the last two. So the first question was the topic of youth, energy transition and the youth. Last one will be on, if there are any questions. I see there are a lot of young professionals in our midst, so please mount the stage. I'll give you the microphone and then introduce yourself, name, wherever you're from, take the questions. Remember, it's direct.
We have data that
So if you can
Me something that you may direct to someone else. One of the things that is a big problem, particularly in Africa, is finding available data is support some of the things that we want to. And that's what Doc talked about with the research. So when I talked about limited education, inadequate education, I was using the data that we had at ECHO Africa, given our engagement with young people. So I mentioned that in the last 5 months, we implemented now it's X-based, it's not. So we implemented the X-based 5 and 6 basis engagement for tertiary students. And looking at the record of students that joined, we had about 500. My head is here. And on the thorough engagement that we had with them, about 90% of them had very little idea about
many of these people that. But if you engage with students doing different assessments, people cross learning, there's nothing of that sort. But very
directly our future now. So I'm thinking that more importantly, what we need to do is to impress upon the necessary stakeholders, the agency of incorporating these things within educational syllabus, just like it's been done across, like you mentioned, the SDGs. It's a very important thing. Go to the senior high schools now, ask them what idea they have about sustainable development goals. You may have a room full of people staring at you. You have a university, right? So we can find a way and then inculcate these things within the educational system. That way, of course, they may not turn out, they come out of the universities as experts, but they may come out as people with at least some fundamental knowledge on how to go about these things. And we can directly be able to start solving some of the things that are predicated on, sustainability. Yeah.
We'll take the other question, which is about funding the energy, funding energy education. But what I want you to do, Lawyer Benedicta, is just include, the legislative aspects about this issue as well, and how we can, government and industry stakeholders can actually come together and support these legislative challenges related to funding energy education in Africa or Ghana.
Thank you very much. So if you look at Africa, let me narrow it down to Ghana. One legislative challenge, first of all, that I would say we have is we do not clearly engage relevant stakeholders before the law is enacted. Yes, the law is enacted. It establishes the ministry, it establishes the roles of various people. It states that maybe as a country, we are going to get funds for education on renewable energy, or we're going to tap into renewable energy. But then if you listen to every speaker, for example, the issue of the just sustainable transition cuts across various cycles. The science-based is innovative. So you have experts like Dr. Charles Ofori, then the research-based aspect, Dr. Yen. So if we are able to speak to these people, speak about their challenges first, then we can include that into the legislation. Now moving to the funding opportunity. So what is happening in the North is you have, for example, like I stated, South Africa has a carbon tax. There are various organizations here that are doing production, processing, industrialization, so we can include that into it. That will be a source of funding. Now, we also have carbon bonds that are happening in the north. So you have funds that are specially designated for projects that are related towards environmental friendliness and sustainability. And so if you establish something like a carbon bond, now what is going to happen is if you have a project for energy advocacy in schools, secondary or high schools, you can actually tap into that source of funding because there's a fund that is specifically designated for that, as opposed to probably going to a bank for a loan or trying to go to various stakeholders to seek for funding. So if you look at it, these are two main things we can look at as a country to put the funding opportunity: the carbon tax and then the bond. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What I'm going to do is, because of lack of time, I'll allow 3 questions from the audience, but you're going to direct them to our very able session chair, Sheena. What we're going to do is she'll keep these questions, and then I want you guys to engage with the SPE Ghana session, and then you will see responses to these questions on our social media, on our WhatsApp page, and all of that. So please give the mic to 3 people. Raise your hand, introduce yourself, state your question, and Sheena will note them down. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Abrakundi from Eco Africa. So my question is for West specifically. So we know that there's some kind of the link between the relationship between the older generation and the current youth that we are having. When it comes to the issue about renewable energy transition, how do we form some kind of intergenerational link between these 2 groups of people? Because it's like we are saying that the youth do not have the requisite knowledge, but do the older generation have the requisite knowledge for technology advancement, for ensuring that we transition towards net zero ambitions? Thank you very much.
Renewable energy transition based on intergenerational link and especially technology as well. So we'll note that down, the Ghana session, and you have a response to your question. Next question, please, very quickly.
Yeah, please, my name is Simple Lancelot, and I'm a student of UMass. During his presentation, he did mention of gender equality. He said industry players can promote gender equality in the energy sector by implementing policy. And please, I'm very glad because it goes directly to the 2. I don't know any policies that generate certain maybe gender imbalance or anything that we generate new policies to equalize gender. You know, for that. Yeah.
That down. Last question, please. The very last one.
Yes, so mine is, what would African financing do? Because when you look at energy transition conversation, we think the West is driving it. It's because they have the money. So that's an opportunity, yes, but which opportunity is financing? If we look within Africa, Africa should look at mobilizing the resources so that even if the global finance hydrocarbon projects, can businessmen are financing it so that we use our energy first. So the transition is ongoing, but we are catching up with the resources we have, because like it has been stated, when we leave the resources there, who benefits? But when we bring it out, at least African economies would benefit from it. So I think that the whole conversation is nobody's whipping us in line, but let's take advantage the transition will be ongoing. Come back, our energy sources are doing that. We are taking advantage of the hydrocarbons and pushing our own development. So SPE, I think that should come up in your discussion, how African societies will raise finances within Africa so that nobody is directing us what to do. Then we can do our own.
Thank you very much. That's a very clear question. So for other questions, please, after the session, please, Sheena, direct the questions to her. And I promise you, it will all be answered. At this point, we have to come to the end of our panel discussion. It has been very insightful. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank all our speakers, Dr. Charles Ofori, Dr. Yen Adams, again, the surname, I'm sorry, Engineer Joseph Willie, Worship Joshua Frimpong, and Benedicta Akese Anand. Thank you so much for making this conversation very insightful. We appreciate you. We appreciate SPE Ghana, to you, the audience, to our partners, ACEP, to all our partners, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. Thank you. So we're just going to take a group photo and we can go now.
Please, let's clap at them. Let's clap for them. It's not easy to discuss energy transition matters. It's not easy. You don't know who is recording you. for what purpose? You be there and then the US embassy will call you. You be there, the Russian embassy. But, right, so great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Let's clap again for them, for that wonderful presentation. No idea how much time went into preparation, you know. No. Yeah, so we thank you so much, and for that wonderful panel discussion. Time will not permit us to get all the questions answered. But once you tune out with us, ask us, we'll just transfer the question to whoever you want to answer. Don't worry, we'll give them, we shall give their numbers and email addresses to you for follow-ups. Okay? If I have a question for all of them, I'll do that after the event today. I want to invite a friend to give us, in that respect, to give us the closing remarks, to share his view of whatever has been discussed and what he also anticipates from COP28. For those who will be there, for those who will join virtually, we encourage you to tune on, so that in case what you expect is not mentioned, I hope this time around Ghana will not go and talk about one district, one factory, and then one district, one dam. Basically, I think Ghana, just like any other African country, has a lot to ask. And last I checked, West Africa countries, any of West Africa countries has received any funding for the whatever has been promised. Only East Africa, specifically Kenya and Rwanda, probably might see something. So let me call on. Are you Malam yet? Okay. Are you? But you, Imam. Okay. But allegedly, I know for sure. So I want to call on Alhaji Dr. Suleiman to give us a closing remark. Thank you very much. And I always say all protocols observed. It's been my greatest pleasure to be with you. I'll be straightforward. First of all, I think it's been insightful. I can't make an attempt to dilute this concentrated piece of information that has been, given to us. However, I will still be able to mention one or two things. First of all, I think we have to give a huge commendation to ASEP and then SPE for this, this kind of organization. And then the topics in particular, this has been of global concern, and you will understand that. So I want to, can we give them a round of applause, please? It's very important. Yeah, so just one or two things that I will mention, and then we can wrap it up. We've heard a lot of our policymakers talking about nobody's going to force us to transition. We need just energy transition. Yes, we need that. But who is going to guarantee us just energy transition? The answer is nobody. Nobody except ourselves can guarantee us this just energy transition that we're talking about. Now, the same thing applies to saying, can we be forced to transition? It's the same paradigm. Yes, Africa can be forced to transition. However, if you do one or two things, I think it could help us to transition on our own pace, as we are always expecting to do. We always mention that we want to transition on our own pace. Yeah, so a lot of the, the panelists and then the speakers, they talk so much, and I can't say much, but just a few things that I can mention. If you look at the world of hydrocarbon and that of renewables, this could be collaborating. And the success of the world of hydrocarbon, which is now holding the baton, which inevitably will be transferred to the world of renewable. We can't run away from that. It is just a matter of when. It should be a collaborative effort. It should not be a kind of antagonism. And the reason why I believe renewable energy has struggled, if you look at the activists or the champions of those who push renewable energy, they've done it for a very long time. And it's not making that inroads that is required. The reason is the approach. Now, what it requires for both world of hydrocarbon and renewable to succeed is what my good friend mentioned. And that's why we've not seen that. Innovation and technology. This is very key. We need innovation in world of hydrocarbon to stay relevant, because time is coming, not too long to come. You will need innovation to stay relevant in the business. So that's how come those still in the world of hydrocarbon, a lot of investment has gone into what you call carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology. And it's happening. If you come to my place, I'll give my place an example. Every single stream of hydrocarbon that we are now doing, we try to minimize the carbon footprint. And maybe that even the half of hydrocarbon. And that's the thing I'm going to conclude, that everybody should make an effort if you are capable to make it to COP28. And I'll tell you why. The Gulf nations, they are quiet. But I always use the proverb that the empty barrels made the most noise. If you go to COP28, and I think it will be an opportunity, you'll get to know the inroads the Gulf states, which is the hub of hydrocarbon, they are making in renewable energy. You won't believe it. Within our own area where we stay, we don't use hydrocarbon, we are using solar. This is the Gulf. Our steam turbines, we are running with steam. The steam is generated from solar. If you look at our solar field, it's about 36 football pitches. When you stand, you can't see. This is the Gulf states. If you go to Abu Dhabi, Oman, whatever, that's what I'm urging you, if you have opportunity, come. So that in Africa, if we stand and tell ourselves that, we are going to transition on our own pace, I can tell you that we can be forced to transition. And I'll give an example. Are you aware that Europe, they want to, by 2035, they want to go EV, so it will be very difficult. Granted, let's just play the devil advocate. It is possible. If it is possible, most African countries, let's come back to Ghana. We finish products from Europe. Is that not it? We don't manufacture cars. So if assuming Europe is phenomenal, they are successful in driving this EV, in which they are doing, and they will not stop, I can tell you. Refineries become redundant. That's what it means. And when refineries become redundant, that's the end of it. Do you have refineries? We don't. Africa, we don't have refineries. So in conclusion, what I want to mention is that to guarantee us just energy transition, innovation and technology is key. In both the world of hydrocarbon, remember, they are not stopping. Like I mentioned, we are still in the world of hydrocarbon, but there's a lot of huge research and development going on, to the extent that we are doing zero flaring. Every stream of methane, ethane, or whatever the chain,
We are not leaving anything to chance. Why? Because we know time will come when you are seeking for finance, and it's even happening now. When you are seeking for finance, they'll look at your credentials, the kind of carbon footprint that you can put, and that's coming. So I will urge that the academies, the pundits, the researchers or whatever, innovation and technology is going to drive it, like it or not. And my good friend mentioned how we are lacking in that area. And that's how come I believe that we need to strengthen ourselves in those areas. Finally, we are talking about net zero. Net zero does not mean zero investment. Let's get this very clear in the world of hydrocarbon. Net zero, like somebody rightly mentioned, we still have coal with us. Is that not it? Yes. So net zero simply means that, whatever carbon footprint that you have, you zero it. You can emit, but you make sure that you capture it. However, if you cut the production, that's the easiest way, but we cannot do that because of what we call energy security. So I say this to the champions of world of hydrocarbon. World of renewables and world of hydrocarbon. In the global space, there is huge competition, and there's huge, sometimes I'll call it anarchy, which is not friendly. Stop taking each other to court. It's not necessary. Prove that you have a business case. And that's what is lacking in renewables, like it or not. If what my good friend mentioned, my friend from Ghana, the Petroleum Hub, the 3 A's that he mentioned, that is the things that renewables have not gotten answers to. And I can tell you, if tomorrow renewable energy has answers to accessibility, dependability, availability, and of a hydrocarbon market, that's true. But it's going to be difficult. I'm saying that's going to be difficult because even those who are pushing it, US is trying to refill their SPR. US since 2019 has been the #1 oil producer, and they are not ready to leave it. So they even need oil of hydrocarbon to even stay on their industrial drive. Technology is key. I will mention that. Technology is key to achieving just energy transition, and we must know this. There shouldn't be a point where we think that nobody can force it to transition. Let's put that aside and make sure that we invest in technology. If we do that, I think, like my good friend mentioned, we can transition on our own pace. And then the question that you asked, maybe I will just open our minds. Africa, we do have some conduits, just that we put the vehicles in place and we leave them to rot. After African Development Bank and after Exim Bank, these are the conduits energy transition. If you make them work and work well. Because at the point in time, like I mentioned, the finance is talking about, it might not come. If in fact it has stopped flowing like the way we want it to flow. So if you have these vehicles and we let them work and work efficiently, I think we're going to go somewhere. So I think, that's virtually what I want to mention. And I think I commend our able speakers and the panelists. It was excellent and I enjoyed it. If I didn't come, I would have missed a lot. I think we'll have opportunity again to meet again to talk about this. Thank you so much.
Wow. I know Doc is in a hurry, but don't go. We'll take a group photo before you leave. The way of announcement, the food is ready. You just need to go upstairs to the party house. This is a workhouse. There's a party house upstairs. Then pick up your lunch, and then we'll be done. We are leaving here in the next 2 minutes. I promise you by 12:30 we're done, and it's 12:23. Clap for me. If you didn't clap, you can get some of the food. I'll share it. But Doc, thank you so much for that closing remarks. There couldn't be any other closing remarks as you've done. I like the part of empty barrels making it loud. Most loud noise. And it's true. We've seen what the Middle East or the Gulf you guys are doing. Shell and BP made quite a lot of noise on the fact that they are transitioning to energy companies. But what Qatar and Saudi Aramco are doing, last 2 months in Canada at the World Petroleum Congress, they showcased some few things that they've done in terms of renewables. It was awesome. And I think this is where we need to go to. And the narrative of we'll transit in our own pace. I think Ben came to look at my face. He's been whispering this in my ears.
I want to buy EV car. You know, Ben, I bought an EV car. And he's lucky he's the only car like that in Ghana. I'd have stolen it. If another person buys one, add it to whatever he has, his phone will get lost. You know. There were some few questions that came up virtually. I also want to thank those who joined us, and the questions are awesome. For information, I can show you that the fact Africa is relatively energy poor. What are some of practical solutions institutions and stakeholders like you can bring on board to ensure accessibility and affordability of energy? Since that has been the contributing factor to our energy poverty, following the statistics of Africa is going to produce about 50% of materials for energy transition. Is it going to be like oil, where we produce oil, but we have high prices? I think that was somehow addressed even in the closing remarks in one of the presentations. We need to take advantage of what we have and stop being just a producer in terms of contribution, but we need to be part of it, part of the change. We need to have the technology here. Here, second one from an anonymous person is that the question to the lovely lawyer and the only lady on the panel. The question for you. I'm sure this lady. What are the key policy considerations that African governments should prioritize to facilitate a successful and equitable transition to more sustainable practices that are feasible for African countries to adapt? I think this is a TV show. This is a TV. So, Honorable My Lady, this is for you. I've learned to say My Lady after 2 weeks ago in court. I said ma to a judge. I'm not ma. So I'm learning my manners. Forgive us. We are engineers and economists. So soon we are ending. I just want to thank everybody, those who join us virtually, those who join us physically. I want to thank ASAP Benboache for giving us this wonderful space. Please let's clap for Ben. We had a chance to open up this space. This is the first gathering Ben is having. You know, if you're clapping, clap. What is that? If you clap, don't clap. But for me, it's an honor that they open up for SPE, Eco Africa, and PADC to have this collaboration with him. And I think we don't take it lightly at all. We really appreciate you. To rent a hall like this with this kind of screen is no less than 3,000 an hour in this country. We know. So thank you so much. You're laughing. Partnership, a collaboration. You know, I didn't pay what to do. But thank you so much. I want to thank PADC. The food you're going to eat was sponsored by PADC. Let's come for PADC also. And then Eco Africa for giving us My Lady. And then worship Joshua himself fighting for the youth. I had a comment from South Africa. African youth are already fighting for their share. So yes, you don't live in a dime. You don't live in a dime. If you are transitioning, we need to transition in collaboration. We need to be part of it, you know. But the just transition for me needs to be redefined. And once again, thanks everybody for whatever you shared. So on that note, you ask the panelists to come back and then ask Dr. Suleiman to join us. Please, Ben, Shina, to join us so that we can take a group photo and we'll go to the top. Again, I call it the party house for our lunch pack. Thank you. We are dismissed.